Now, time for a featured review. And for that, like I already mentioned, we looked at the latest from A24, Love Lies Bleeding. For this one, we're going to go to Zach first. Zach, tell us what it's about and what you thought.
All right, Love Lies Bleeding is the newest film, the sophomore feature from Rose Glass. She made a film called Saint Maud. That was a big hit a couple of years ago. I haven't seen it, but I believe there are fans of it on this podcast and elsewhere. The film takes place in 1989 in New Mexico, and it stars Kristen Stewart, as Lou, and she works at a gym. And great opening scene of this movie. When we first meet Lou, she is unclogging a toilet with her hands. Really a Bud Kill Bill Volume 2 move. I don't know if there was a stripper named Rocket at the gym club, but you get the feeling that it's not too far removed from Bud, the strip club that Bud bounces people out of in Kill Bill Volume 2. It's really seedy. It's in the desert. There seems something very retro about it. And then we're also introduced to another character. The movie does a nice job of parallel editing at first. This other character's name is Jackie, and she is a female bodybuilder who, at the beginning of the movie, is homeless. And she's kind of living in a van down by the river. No, she's not, but she's living by the river underneath a bridge. And the two characters obviously intersect at a certain point. We find out that both of them are fairly sexually oriented, malleable. They develop a sexual relationship. And the movie also has these other elements. We get Dave Franco, who's a very seedy guy. He's an abusive husband in the movie, and he's sort of related in a way to Kristen Stewart's character. And then we have also Ed Harris donning a wig and hair that only Nicolas Cage or Chris Cooper could really pull off. But I'm impressed by the effort of Ed Harris. This is the role that Cage would play in the movie, is Lou's father, who runs a gun range, and he also somehow owns the gym too. And the movie's a little murky about those details. Basically, the movie kind of follows this sort of standard noir procedural from the 80s and 90s, this kind of really seedy sort of stuff where basically Lou and Jackie get involved in this murder that happens for someone who was it was coming for them for a while. She had it coming. I keep thinking of Kill Bill, but this movie isn't quite as good as Kill Bill. But there is a truck in the movie, but it is not a pussy wagon. Maybe it is in some ways. I don't know. And there are some lurid components to it. Meanwhile, Jackie does some steroids in the movie, and it gives her some sort of strange Hulk-like roid rage. And when she becomes her Hulk-like figure, she kind of turns into almost this Frankenstein-like monster that ends up killing people. And in the meantime, there's a really nice interlude where she goes to Las Vegas at Terry's Casino, I might add. When you stay at the Flamingo, Terry? That is where the bodybuilding, the female bodybuilding competition is happening. And I thought, man, it was nice getting this little like Pumping Iron 2, the women montage. It was a nice kind of callback to that era. This movie is a fun movie to talk about, and there are definitely times when it is a fun movie to watch. I think it would have been really fun to go to this movie with a bunch of friends at a midnight showing, maybe a little bit, not entirely sober. Unfortunately, that was not my experience with this movie. I saw this movie with about 5 other people in the theater at 4:00 in the afternoon, and it was a little bit of a drag. The story for this movie is really, really lame. Like, I know that it's got good performances and it's got some interesting costuming and hairstyling, and there's some nice gritty violence and sex in the movie, but the plot is so dumb. The IQ of this movie is like 10, okay? There are also a lot of contrivances in the movie. Like, we have to believe that somehow Jackie would have, unbeknownst, come across both Dave Franco, Ed Harris, and Kristen Stewart all in the same day. Come on, give me a break. There's also a contrivance that involves a character who, by the way, when I was watching the movie, she's played in the movie by an actress named Anna Baryshnikov, but I thought her character, or the actress that was playing her name in the movie, by the way, is it Daisy? I think so. I thought Daisy was being played by Dakota Fanning. So it was really distracting because I thought, oh, wait, that's Dakota Fanning, but I didn't see her name in the credits. And then as I was watching the movie, I kind of thought, well, this is really a Mia Goth role because there's no character named James, but she could have said JJ. But anyway, she's kind of outlandish and crazy, but again, kind of a contrivance. I mean, there's no real purpose for her role except to show up at times when the screenplay needs something violent to happen. And I really didn't like that about the movie. I thought the movie could have done something a lot more interesting with the idea of this side effect of the steroids that Jackie was using. And again, it turns her into this monster, this crazed character. I liked that, and I liked her meltdown at the all women. It wasn't all women, but it was the Mr. and Miss Olympia competition at the Flamingo. That shit was really good, and I liked her dynamic with Kristen Stewart. But ultimately, the plot was too stupid. There's a ridiculous ending that is going to probably turn off a lot of people in the last 10 minutes. It's not so much that I objected to it. It's just it felt like the director sort of throwing in the towel, saying, "Listen, I don't really have a whole lot more interesting shit to happen in the movie, so we're just going to throw in this thing so people can maybe talk about it and be surprised by it." But I had lost interest in it by then. I was much more interested in the characters, and the movie's more interested in very silly plot. So ultimately, I'm at a 2.5 stars for this movie. It's possible that you guys could sway me one way or another about this movie, but I will say I got really bored with it, which is really disappointing because anytime you get a character unclogging a toilet with their bare hands at the beginning of the movie, I'm invested. There's a scene where one of the characters has a bug and it goes up his arm, and I'm thinking he's about to eat it. That's what this director is going to do, and lo and behold, he ate it. And that's why I can't really approve of this movie, because you just kind of know what's going to happen. It doesn't really do anything too daring. It probably thinks it's better than it actually is. It's just kind of disappointing. So 2.5 stars, but I'm curious to see what you guys have to say about it.
Well, I believe you also said you just watched Adam's review and wanted to comment on that a little bit.
Oh, yeah. Well, listen, it is definitely an Adam movie. I mean, it's got the wrestling component in it. It's got the Las Vegas component because he was talking about our Vegas trip. I could see Adam definitely liking the movie. This is probably on the more of an Adam Todd type hybrid movie. But ultimately, I'm not quite there. So, Adam didn't quite convince me, but I'm curious to see where you guys land.
All right, Todd, you're next.
Yeah, well, it's definitely more my movie than you guys, but it's definitely more of an Adam movie than me. But I don't know. I thought the movie was a lot of fun, and I disagree. Like, I had no clue where this movie was going at any moment, and that's what I loved about it. It has this like really like solid Nicholas Winding Refn type of like sexy pop appeal to it. Like everything with the Clint Mansell music, which is awesome. There's a little bit of David Lynch in there too. But Ed Harris is, I mean, I don't know how that was the role that he was signed on to play. Like, he's way too old for that role, and it's the most confusing hair choice I've seen since like Ben Kingsley in The Whackness or something. It was bizarre. And Kristen Stewart also was way too old for that role too, but she has a baby face, so I guess she can do anything. I just don't know how old these characters are actually supposed to be. But I had no idea what the movie's about going in, which is an interesting way to do that. I mean, I just knew it was a Sundance movie and Kristen Stewart was in it, and that's kind of good enough for me. Dave Franco is like basically playing a James Franco role, which I don't think he's ever done that more obviously than he was doing here. He even sounded like James more than he sounded like Dave. But Katy O'Brian is the star of the movie. She's terrific. Like, she is a beast. But she's also kind of amazing to watch because she's got like a fair amount of like emotion in her eyes, and that wasn't what I was expecting from that character. She's like a more muscular Sasha Lane or something. But I don't know. It hits a point where it goes from being pretty believable, which is like the first like half hour or so, and then it's just insane. But I was fascinated by it in a lot of ways. I feel like it's this year's Bones and All. The shock value of the violence is like kind of cheap, but it's also satisfying in some ways. I don't know what the kind of appeal this movie is going to be, honestly. I saw it on opening night with 5 other people, and one was an old lady, and she walked out during a sex scene like 40 minutes in. So I have no idea who's going to watch this or if they're going to like it, but I really kind of did. There's little spring breakers in there because it just keeps going and getting escalating and going further and further out there. I give it's like a high 3 star. It's one of the best movies I've seen this year.
All right, so Zach gives it 2.5. Todd gives it a high 3, and of course, I'm somewhere in the middle. I'm leaning 3 stars right now. The first like 2/3 of this movie, I was really into. I thought it was fascinating watching the relationship develop, the weird family dynamic that's going on here, the interesting steroid side plot that's going on as well. You know it's all going to come crashing down in some way. You just didn't necessarily see it being an FBI probe into a criminal underbelly that her father like like the mastermind of. Like it was like once it started like digging into that, like this is where we're going to go for the third act. I went, "Wait, what?"
I mean, that's a pretty big spoiler, Terry. Like, I mean, the appeal of this
Spoiler
movie is that you have no idea
No.
where it's going.
No, you knew exactly that this is where it was, or that this was out there. You knew that this is what was going on from the very beginning. I don't feel like that's a spoiler. Anyways, the way it plays out, is weird. But just the fact that that's the way it goes for the third act, I don't know. It kind of lost me because I thought that was the least interesting part, and it was like, okay, we got to take this interesting character study and make it something where they have to like save the day, and in doing so save each other. So it that kind of turned me off a little bit. It went against everything that was going good for it up until that point. As it is, like the last 5-10 minutes, Zach, you referenced it. I thought it worked. I don't know why, but I thought it worked, and I because I thought it kind of stuck the landing, even though I didn't necessarily like how it decided to lead up to the landing. I'm still giving it 3 stars.
Yeah, I mean, basically, I'm my review is almost the same as yours, Terry. It's just I got kind of sick of it. I like I said, when the character eats the bug, I'm like, yeah, that's what this movie is. I mean, and
Yeah.
I guess I would maybe rephrase. Maybe I wouldn't say that the movie was predictable, but not so much predictable in its plotting, but predictable in its tone and predictable in its shock value. Like again, there's some real shocking scenes in this movie, in terms of sex and violence, but because the movie doesn't really have it's not really that interested in its characters. It's just more interested in crazy shit that the director's kind of throwing at us. And normally, a lot of time I'm down for movies like that. Actually, a movie that just occurred to me as you guys were kind of describing, it was Killer Joe by the late great William Friedkin. This movie has definitely a similar vibe to Killer Joe, in that you just don't know the crazy shit that's going to happen next. But that movie was much more grounded in how crazy messed up each of the characters was in that. Like, you think of Juno Temple in that movie, and you think of the great THC, Thomas Hayden Church, and like the movie is not so much about the crazy plot with Emil Hirsch and the money or whatever. It's just about how crazy that family is. This movie, you're right. It's about, spoiler alert, FBI probes. It's about hitmen. It's about who's an informant. It's about, who killed who and for what reason. I don't really care. The core of this movie is Kristen Stewart and Katy O'Connell, and they have a great, Katy O'Brian, excuse me. They have a great chemistry in the movie that, as we've all kind of said, is great in the opening 30 minutes. And you got this cool shit with the steroids. Just make that the movie, okay? As much as we like Ed Harris and his hair, we've seen that in so many other movies. We don't need it. I haven't seen a roid rage with female bodybuilders before. That shit's really cool, and that was interesting. But the movie wasn't as interested in it for some reason. So I don't know, just too much, too extravagant. Like even the Daniels probably thought this movie was too much.
No, they definitely don't.
You say that's going a step
okay,
too far,
maybe that's a bit extreme, but I'm just saying. Maybe the Daniels liked it. Maybe that was the problem.
The Daniels did have an entire movie designed around Daniel Radcliffe farting his way off an island. So,
Oscar winners.
Yeah. All right. Well, we have 2 at 3 stars. We've got 1 at 2.5 stars. I didn't notice, Zach. What did Adam give? Adam loved this movie, right?
Adam liked it. Adam liked it quite a bit. So did Arlette.
Okay.
They were both big fans.
So there you go.
Obviously, I mean, it's a total Adam movie.
It is in theaters now. There was a decent amount that hit theaters this week. Probably the one that most people saw was Arthur the King, with Mark Wahlberg and a dog.
Okay, well, this movie finished 6th at the box office. Number 1 was Kung Fu Panda 4, of course. Then Dune right behind, and then Arthur the King about a quarter of Dune.
Oh gosh. And what else? What else was in there? What was 4 and 5 leading into 6?
Imaginary and Cabrini.
Okay.
I like
And Bob
Kristen
Marley
Imaginary
still up there.
is the teddy bear
Those are-
horror movie.
Yes, Imaginary. I like Kristen Stewart in this movie. I mean, it's a ballsy role that I don't think a lot of other actors would do. But she's great at it, and I agree that I think it is a potentially like a star-making performance out of Katy O'Brian. But that's what I'll remember about the movie, hopefully, and just kind of forget the other stuff. Hopefully, they do more stuff together.
It's sort of like when we first saw like Gina Carano in that Soderbergh movie, and you're like, okay, she's got something, and that's a role that only she could play, kind of.
Yeah.
Apparently, she's been in The Mandalorian, but she will be in Twisters later this year. So we got that coming.
I never would have thought of Sasha Grey on steroids would have ever entered our lexicon on this podcast, but I like it, and I'm here for it. And
Sasha Lane, not Sasha Grey, not the porn star.
Oh well, that's right. I was going to that.
Well, I mean,
Soderbergh.
Sasha.
Well, I like
why not Sasha Grey
on
too?
steroids, but yeah, that's what I was thinking. I was like Sasha Grey on steroids. I don't think no one is delivering that content except for our podcast. So I'm here for it.
She's a hybrid of the two. There we go.
I think Katy O'Brian
Sasha
kind of
Lane?
looks like Ariana DeBose too. Like her and Ariana DeBose could play sisters in a movie.
Sasha Lane's the girl from American Honey.
Oh, that's not a bad comparison. Okay.
That's why I made it.